Have you ever felt like the deeper you think, the more distant you become from others? That the more you understand, the less anyone wants to listen? It's not just in your head. Society has always had a peculiar fear of deep thinkers. Not because they're wrong, but because they see what others aren't ready to acknowledge. History is full of brilliant minds who've been ridiculed, silenced, or ignored. Not for lack of intelligence, but because their ideas made people uncomfortable. From Socrates to Galileo, from Tesla to Nietzsche, these figures were outcasts, not because they lacked brilliance, but because they threatened the status quo. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, believed that intelligence was not a gift but a curse. He thought it isolated those who were able to see the world with painful clarity. But why does this happen? Why is there so much resistance to deep thinking? The answer lies within human psychology. Let me explain. Think about this. When you stand next to someone who is physically stronger than you don't necessarily feel weak. You might admire their strength or even be inspired by it. When you meet someone who is wealthier, you might feel a twinge of envy, but you don't necessarily feel attacked. But when you meet someone who is intellectually superior, something strange happens. Psychology calls this the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just present new ideas, they mirror the limitations of those around them. And this reflection can be uncomfortable. It's not about arrogance or superiority. It's about what their very presence forces others to face, their own inadequacies. Why does this happen? Why does intelligence, more than anything else, trigger such discomfort? Here's where it gets interesting. When we encounter someone who is physically stronger, we might see them as a protector or a leader. When someone is wealthier, we might admire their success or aspire to be like them. But intelligence is different. Unlike physical traits or material wealth, intelligence is deeply tied to our identity. We define ourselves by our thoughts, our beliefs, our understanding of the world. When someone challenges that, when they question what we take for granted, it can feel like an assault on our very sense of self. Instead of admiring intelligence, many people subconsciously resist it, not because the deep thinker is condescending, but because their very presence forces others to confront their own limitations. This is why, throughout history, deep thinkers have often been pushed to the fringes of society. Their ideas don't just challenge beliefs, they challenge egos, and as human beings, we'll do almost anything to protect our egos from discomfort. Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever introduced a deep or complex idea into a casual conversation, only to be met with awkward silence? Or noticed how quickly people shift topics when a conversation goes beyond surface-level chatter? This isn't just a coincidence. It's a defense mechanism. When people encounter a deep thinker, their minds instinctively go into self-preservation mode. Instead of being curious, they resist. Instead of engaging, they dismiss. This is why intellectuals and philosophers often find themselves isolated, not because they want to be alone, but because society pushes them away. Interestingly, studies show that confidence is often more valued than intelligence in social settings. People are naturally drawn to those who project certainty, even if their ideas are shallow. This explains why charismatic but simplistic thinkers often gain more influence than deep thinkers who speak with nuance. History is full of leaders, motivational speakers, and viral influencers who thrive by telling people what they want to hear, rather than challenging them to think critically. Meanwhile, those who question widely accepted beliefs often struggle to find a broad audience. This is the paradox of intelligence. The more someone seeks the truth, the more they find themselves disconnected from the majority. The mirror effect doesn't just reflect society's limitations, it highlights why society resists change in the first place. But if intelligence is so threatening, is there scientific proof to back it up? Well, modern neuroscience supports this claim. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, the amygdala, the brain's center of fear and protection, becomes highly active. In simple terms, deep thinking doesn't just intimidate, it triggers a primal fear response, similar to how we react when faced with physical danger. Why is this the case? The answer lies in our evolutionary past. For most of human history, survival didn't depend on being the smartest person in the room, but on being accepted by the group. Our ancestors thrived in tight-knit tribes where social harmony meant survival. Being rejected from the group could mean death. This is why our brains are wired for social acceptance over intellectual pursuit. When someone highly intelligent enters a social setting, they unknowingly disrupt the balance. Their ideas challenge social norms and group dynamics, and this triggers the brain's defense mechanism, as if they were a threat rather than just a thinker. So, if intelligence is so threatening, does it mean deep thinkers are doomed to isolation? Not necessarily. But it does mean they need to understand the forces working against them. If society resists intelligence, what does it embrace? The answer is comfort. A world where predictability is preferred over truth. Schopenhauer believed that intelligence wasn't a gift, it was a burden. The smarter you were, the more disconnected you'd feel from others. The world values comfort, predictability, and routine over deep, existential reflection. Schopenhauer's philosophy rested on the idea of the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all human behavior. He argued that most people live controlled by this will to live, seeking pleasure, comfort, and survival above all else. But deep thinkers, according to Schopenhauer, develop the will to truth, an insatiable hunger for understanding, even if it leads to discomfort. While others seek pleasure and avoid difficult truths, deep thinkers seek truth, even if it means pain and isolation. This creates a profound disconnect between intellectuals and the rest of society. While most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and routine pleasures, deep thinkers often see these things as distractions from more profound existential questions. They crave depth while society craves simplicity. Most people prefer small talk, status games, and polite dishonesty. Deep thinkers, however, see through this and struggle to relate. They recognize the futility of human desires, while others are caught in the chase for money, power, and relationships. In the end, deep thinkers face a difficult truth. Society doesn't reject them because they lack social skills. It's because their intelligence makes them stand out in a world that values conformity over individuality. But that doesn't mean their quest for truth is in vain. It simply means they must navigate a world that isn't always ready to embrace them.